Next, we have an interview with world-renowned trends forecaster Gerald Celente, and he's going to discuss the Chinese, Hong Kong, world economies, plus all the stuff that's happening geopolitically in the APAC region, plus the U.S. elections. You don't want to miss this because he's been on CNN, CBS, NBC, all the major networks. This guy knows what he's talking about. It's something different for our show, and I hope we can bring more these kinds of guests on our show. So please stick around, and after the interview, we will, of course, have our Shame on You award. And welcome back to the interview portion of Eye on Hong Kong podcast. On the line, we have Trends Journal publisher Gerald Celente. Now, Trends Journal, what do? They forecast upcoming trends in the global economy, the state of the world when it comes to conflict and other issues that affect us, even though it might be thousands of miles away, but being Hong Kong, even the littlest thing can affect us because of our unique way that our economy is structured. So without further ado, I welcome Gerald Celente to the program. Gerald, very nice to have you here.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
So I just want to get off, to the races with this question. Your thoughts on the umbrella movement that has been initiated in Hong Kong just in the end of September.
Is that the Occupy Central?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's now called the umbrella movement.
Now called the umbrella movement.
Yes.
I'm here in the States, so I'm really only getting the news from the major wire services, wherever they may be. Very interesting. For example, when you go to China Daily or Global Times, very little coverage. And in the States, we get scant coverage as well. So it's very foggy here to the people. And as I watch it, it seems like a standstill with nothing going on, I'm just, again, telling you from the perception that I'm getting, not from the knowledge that I have. Mm-hmm. And that it's not going anywhere. And what they're doing, as I see it, is they're just wearing out the crowds without getting much of a solution. And as we see it, again, the information that's reported here, what it is that will there be any type of democratic elections, I believe, 2017?
Correct.
And that seems to be the major issue. So it's not getting a lot of play in the States when it does make the newspapers, for example, and I'm still a reader of hard copy newspapers mm-hmm. for a variety of reasons. It usually makes maybe like in the New York Times, page A17.
So not exactly front page stuff.
Not at all. Most Americans don't even know what's going on.
But one thing I've noticed that you've been forecasting as a trend is that protests is not just happening in Hong Kong, but it's actually becoming a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah, it is, because systems are breaking down and people are starting to realize the power that they have. However, I've been at this a lot of years. I began my career. I used to run political campaigns mm-hmm. in Westchester County, which is the richest county in the United States. And I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. I taught American politics and campaign technology at St. John's University. Mm-hmm. And for many years, 6 years, I was a government affairs specialist for the chemical industry. Mm-hmm. I used to live between Chicago and D.C. So I know what it looks like, and I know how these things become effective. And I can tell you from my experience that one of the reasons these protest movements only go so far is that they don't have a battle plan for victory. And they go around trying in many ways to work within the system when the fact is there are no rules. If you play by their rules, you lose because they control the game. You know, it's like going to Las Vegas and the game is, it's a fixed game.
Right.
They know how many people are going to win and how many are going to lose. So you got to bring in your own deck of cards. So for these things to work, they really have to have a strategy that everyone's on board for, with a goal and an objective. And I remember what happened with the Occupy Peace movement in the States. The Occupy Wall Street movements.
Right.
And they didn't have a plan. And they were criticized for it, and nothing happened. So yes, we're seeing the populist movements moving around the world because people are getting shafted. It's obvious to everyone. I mean, in Hong Kong, for example, from the data I read, very few own most of everything. And to different varieties, it's the same thing around the world. There's a small club that controls the whole game, and everybody's working for the man. And enough people have the dignity, courage, respect, and integrity to say, I've had enough. You're not my slave owner. And we're going to do something. So these populist movements are the future. And let's not forget, I'm here in America, there was the American Revolution, the French Revolution. What did happen? It happened from a few people with enough courage to say, we've had enough.
Right.
So yes, we're going to see these movements continuing to spread.
Your analysis is actually spot on, because the umbrella movement doesn't really have a plan. They come out with ideas over and over again, but some of them are not executed, or they cancel them last minute. There really doesn't seem to be any direction that it's going in at the moment. But also we see that from the other side, the government, before you would think that they would try to solve this politically, maybe sit down and have serious discussions, but they are now taking a wait 'em out approach. And I don't know if that's a good strategy either, but I think a lot of people here also have memories of Tiananmen Square, and they don't want a repeat of that. And China, I don't think, wants that image anymore, that when there's dissent, they crush it with tanks.
Well, just for the record, what's going on in Hong Kong could never happen in the States.
Why is that?
They would have cleared you guys, those people out a long time ago. I mean, this country's become so fascist, it's disgusting. You saw what happened in Ferguson, Missouri.
Yes.
Yeah, that's only part of it. They'll beat the hell out of you in no time. Yep. And that's what there's no rights left in this country. There's so few of them. The great ones have been taken away. They even have a thing called protest zones.
Free speech zones. Yeah.
They'll lock you off into a certain corner. Free speech zones. The whole country used to be a free speech zone, and now the Supreme Court ruled that there's people, if they don't want them in the free speech zones, they're not allowed to go in there. Well, what they're doing in Hong Kong could never happen here. If that happened in New York City, this thing would have been over a long time ago. I mean, they let Occupy Wall Street go on because it was in a park. And then when they had enough of it, they cleaned out the park.
Right. We got three major throughways that are being occupied right now, and it's not like because what I saw in Ferguson was militarized police, not even regular.
It's militarized everywhere.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to tell you. You look at the last Trends Journal, the one before this one, before Ferguson, we did a story, Cops Gone Wild. They've given them all this military equipment from Iraq and Afghanistan. They have Humvees, they have, all these SWAT teams. No, it would never happen here. I'm telling you. Like what's going on with the umbrella movement would not happen in the States. It would have been over a long time ago.
I have to agree with you, knowing, following the U.S. For quite a while now, it has seemed to have degenerated. But let's move on to the next topic, the state of the Chinese economy. Now, you talk to mainstream economists, and all day long they will say China's the model, China's the future, China's the way to go. But in your latest Trends Journal, you're saying that the Chinese economy is actually trending towards a recession. Now, why do you believe that's occurring in China?
Well, because a lot of it's a very simple formula. Mm-hmm. If the United States and Europe don't buy, China's not manufacturing.
Right.
And if China's not manufacturing, Australia, Brazil, Chile, Bolivia, they're not exporting their natural resources. So you have a slowdown in purchasing. About 20 to 25% of China's GDP is built on real estate.
Right.
You look at China's real estate in 2013, it was up, numbers were up around 27%. According to official figures, already it's down over 10%.
Right.
We see the photos of empty cities. Reports coming out, and again, these are only numbers that I know that are reported, so I can't verify their factuality, but they seem to be generally accepted as truth. You're looking at, 70 million luxury apartments that are vacant? So, to me, China, the Chinese central bank just announced, I think yesterday, that they dumped in several 100,000 yuan into the system.
More stimulus.
To pump it up. So it's a Ponzi scheme. Just like in the States, they have a different name for it. I don't know how you say quantitative easing in Chinese, but I know they call it Abenomics in Japan, and they call it I'll do anything you want over there in Europe in the ECB by Mario Draghi. And that's all it's going. So China's economy it's on the downward slope. You look at their GDP numbers, they're 1990 levels?
It's quite low, yeah.
Yeah. So no, it's not going to turn around. By the way, China's greatest problems, not Japan or America, with geopolitics, China's greatest problem is its people. And they got 1.2 billion of them there, and with a lot of them out of work, you're going to see a populist movement. I mean, and I was reading, and again, the facts only come out, sporadically. I remember one year there was something like 50,000 uprisings in China. And, they don't get reported very often. No, China's facing a lot of problems, and the biggest one is going to be internally if manufacturing slows down. There's massive overcapacity in China.
And that's what I've been saying on our show for the last couple of months, is that Xi Jinping, the president, is actually consolidating power through this so-called anti-bribery, anti-corruption drive, getting pledges of allegiance from the PLA, using the terrorist threat to put more police in every corner of the street, especially in Beijing. And I said it's not for security. They know things are coming down, and it's coming down hard. So they're preparing now so they can control the situation.
Exactly. And they're doing it in a lot of the countries.
Yeah, and they're saber-rattling with Japan as a distraction and Philippines. Do you agree with that?
To some extent with Japan. Yeah, with Japan, what's going on now, actually, this is a very, it mirrors World War II. Americans, all they know is that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. They don't look at what happened before that. The Japanese were undercutting the market. And the Americans started cutting them off from natural resources. They couldn't get rubber, they couldn't get oil. And Japan said, we're going to get our own. Well, Japan's doing the same thing now with Abenomics. Look at the yuan. It's fallen from 50%. It's gained. The yen has fallen from 50% from the yuan.
Right.
And and about 40% from the won, the Korean currency.
Right.
So what does that do? It improves their export market. That's what this is about.
So it's currency war?
Up about this. It's a currency war, and that brings on the trade war.
Right.
So here's the scenario. You have a crash, you have a recession, depression, you have currency wars, trade wars, and world wars. They use the war element as the last card in the game to cover up the economic failure. How many times do people have to see the same story replayed? Just different actors with different names.
I have to totally agree with your analysis there. We'll move on to Hong Kong's economy. Hong Kong's economy, you know that the Hong Kong dollar is actually pegged to the U.S. dollar. And whatever the Fed does, we have to follow suit. So when they have record low interest rates, we have record low interest rates, which has absolutely in a way, destroyed the real economy in Hong Kong because our inflation has gone through the roof. Property prices are insane. Do you think that the Hong Kong dollar would be better off depegging or floating its currency or getting rid of it altogether and going with the yuan?
I would say they'd be better off going with the yuan, so you have a central power of action. Again, from my reading about what's now called the umbrella movement, I remember they quoted one woman saying, "The only place, all the restaurants and what was it? All of the family restaurants and dress shops or whatever it was, they're gone now.
Correct.
And all there are drug outlets and places to buy gold or something, jewelry,
high-end watches, high-end clothes, and so-called pharmacies. But really, they're just selling everyday needs at inflated prices to the mainland tourists that come here."
Yeah, so that's what she said it's become. Mm-hmm. And it's a multinational takeover. We're coming out with the top trends of 2015 shortly. Mm-hmm. And one of them, I'll give you one of them. It's bankism, not capitalism. Stop the baloney about this being capitalism. It ain't even close, man. It's a rigged game by the banks. Save the BS. Anybody that wants to go, teach economics 101, knock yourself out. This is a banking takeover. You said it with the central bank pegging the Hong Kong currency to the U.S. dollar. It's one big banking scam. Do you think it was, here we go. Let's really pretend to be stupid. They did away with quantitative easing last Wednesday in the United States.
Right.
On Friday, they announced another round of Abenomics, a money-pumping scam that would be equivalent when you compare the GDPs of each country to the United States Fed pumping in $3 trillion.
And most of that money's come here.
What?
Most of that money has actually come here because they're buying real assets with all that printed money.
Exactly. And what they're doing, they're keeping the Ponzi scheme going, because then you look at their pension fund that has $1.4 trillion, and now they're going to invest 50% of it into the equity markets, both in Japan and globally. Mm. It's a rigged game. It's bankism. And all the banks do is what they scam is very simple. We used to call them loan sharks when I grew up in the Bronx. And here's what they do. Hey, here's some money for you. Don't worry about it. Yeah, low interest rate. You pay me back when you get it. And all it is they keep loaning you money, and you become an indentured servant, and you have to work to pay them off, and then they create jobs that pay nothing. That's all this is. It's a banking takeover globally.
You say that that we're getting jobs that pay nothing. You're absolutely right. We have a 3.3% unemployment rate. That's pretty much, you could say full employment. But the types of jobs we get are these crappy jobs where all you're doing is really servicing the tourists that are coming through here, and you're not even making, $1,200 to $1,400 US a month. And with property prices at a decent, I wouldn't even call this decent these days, but about 400 square foot apartment, you're looking at these days 1.5 million US dollars. It's insane. Nobody can reach these property prices anymore. Who's just working, 9 to 5. So you're correct in your analysis when you say that this is no longer capitalism. We've been harping on this for a while. We're not in capitalism. Capitalism is not the problem because we're not in it.
You're not in it.
Yeah.
And so what the socialists are going to do, they're going to blame this as a failure of capitalism.
Correct.
It's not a failure of capitalism. It's a failure of fascism. It's called a merger of state and corporate powers.
Right.
And that's what you have. The corporate powers are running the governments.
And
there is no government. All they are a bunch of flunkies for the corporations. There's not a man or woman among them. Look who's right. Look at Cameron, Obama, Holland.
Right.
Look around the world. These aren't men. They're boys. And they take orders and they follow and do what they're told to do.
I completely agree with you. We have an example right here. Our former chief secretary, Raphael Hui, who's the number 2 in Hong Kong, is on trial right now for accepting bribes while he was in office from the billionaire tycoon brothers, the Kwok brothers of Sun Hung Kai Properties, and they're in trial right now. And most of the evidence is damning. The verdict hasn't come out. The prosecution is now going to closing arguments. But you're correct. They are not working for the best interests of the people. They're working for the best interests of their corporate masters.
Yeah, that's it. And themselves.
And themselves.
They're sociopaths and psychopaths.
Best way to describe them.
And we just had an election here in the States.
Right.
Yeah, they threw out the bums and brought in the scums.
So nothing's going to change with the Republicans taking over.
The inepts have just replaced the incompetents. Yeah. I mean, how much more proof? What are you bringing in the same group that caused the other problems, that caused a different round of problems? How could any respectable adult look up to these people? How could anybody with 1 ounce of self-respect look up to these people?
What do you think, Mr. Celente, is the only way to solve our current predicament where we're living, 9 to 5, earning not just earning enough to get by, and we didn't used to have an economy like this here or even in the US or Canada. We could have our own store, we could have a decent, a blue-collar job, and still have enough for a car, a mortgage to pay, and a house and all that stuff. Now it's just, I can just barely make my rent, I can barely put food on the table, and of course the food we're getting is crappy because we can't afford the good stuff anymore. What is the solution to all this, in your opinion?
It begins with the individual. Mm-hmm. And to me, people have to regain their courage, dignity, self-respect, integrity, and as an Italian, passion, passione. Mm-hmm. And they don't have it. Until that happens, nothing's going to change. And the system that I believe in to work the best, the model exists. It's the Swiss system, direct democracy. Let the people vote. Mm-hmm. And if they could do it in Switzerland, could do it anywhere. If you could bank online, you could vote online. What's the big deal? And so to us, when you want a referendum have a referendum, you put it on the ballot. And the other one is anti-globalization. The people have become much. It's not globalization; it's multinationalization. And to go back to your own currency, and you have self-sustaining economies as much as you can.
I think, though, Hong Kong can't really be a self-sustaining economy because of how its uniqueness as an entreport, since its inception. But the reason I've had you on to discuss not just Hong Kong issues but world issues is because when one little thing happens in one country, it affects us here because of our unique status as a free port, as an entreport. For example, when the EU put sanctions on Russia, Russia could no longer get money from London banks as a loan. So what happened was that the Russian banks have come to Hong Kong and getting loans here. So we're very interconnected in this, dot on a map, but I think it's quite significant overall. And
well, that's part of your self-sustaining economy. That's what I'm trying to say. It's not that you're going to manufacture and grow everything. Mm-hmm. You try to make it as self-sustaining as you can. So that's a unique element within the economy. And so that's the strength. So what I'm saying is that for countries that can and use what they have, you mentioned Russia.
Right.
Russia has all the natural and human resources they need to be a self-sustaining economy. And when you look throughout Europe, so do many of the other countries. And one of the big trends we're going to be coming up with are the breakthroughs in what's called alternative energy. But they're not alternative energies. What's going to happen is that just as we no longer use ice and refrigeration has made ice obsolete, that's like calling the light bulb an alternative energy.
Right.
When compared to candles. So you're going to start seeing a point where oil and fossil fuels become a thing of the past. And new energy developments, and we're into the 21st century.
Right.
You're going to see major breakthroughs start happening. So when that happens, countries then become even more self-sustaining. I'm a believer in people maintaining their identities. Every day I meditate. And at the end of the meditation, I thank the ancestors. Because as I see it, and again, only speaking for myself, I see it, I'm just a piece of their DNA. And I'm me because of them. And all the attributes that I've picked up from them and all that I've learned from them. So to me, it's, as I say, my blood is Napolitano, but my heart is American. And I could never be me if I was born in any other country. But I thank the ancestors for what I have, and I do my very best to maintain that connection with my ethnicity. So when I'm talking about self-sustaining economies, I think the strength of the world is the individuality and personalities of each nation and the people within them, and that's being lost.
Our guest has been Gerald Celente, the publisher of the Trends Journal. You can subscribe to the Trends Journal at trendsjournal.com. That's trendsjournal.com. Is it quarterly, Mr. Celente, or?
Well, the magazine is a quarterly, the hard copy, of course, and digital, and then we do a Trends Monthly, and we also have Trends in the News. We do the real news each weekday, every Monday through Friday, of the real news going on so that you're ahead of the news and on top of the trends. So you get a lot with the Trends Journal.
And you host those, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So please visit trendsjournal.com, and I thank you, Mr. Celente, for coming on our show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, and all the best and for success and to create a future that's deserving of a high civilization. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And welcome back to the final segment of Eye on Hong Kong. We, of course, are going to give our Shame on You award.
Right.
And I nominate Samsung for this ridiculous privacy policy where they can record your conversation and send it to some third party.
I would nominate Samsung too because Hong Kong TV are going to be launched within 1 or 2 weeks, and a lot of people using Samsung to watch the new Hong Kong TV channel.
Right, because HKTV is not terrestrial; it's actually going through the internet. And with Samsung TVs, you can just directly connect to the TV and get the programming instead of getting a separate box.
Yep.
So it's very dangerous to have this kind of technology, and they're not that I'm against technology, but not when it's used against you like that. So Samsung, congratulations, you have just received the Shame on you award, and maybe one day recording Korean so it can be completely understood. And that's the end of our show. Please subscribe to our Facebook page. Like it, facebook.com/IOnHKPod. Twitter at IOnHKPod. You can get the rest of the details there. YouTube.com/IOnHK. You can get the rest of our contact details there. And, I hope you enjoyed the interview with Gerald Celente. We will try to have more international guests like that in the future, not just local guests. But, of course, tell us what you think on our Facebook page. You like these kinds of guests? Do you want different kinds of? You got any guest suggestions? We are always open to hear your suggestions. And that's the end of our show. Goodbye.
Goodbye.